Hello and welcome to this presentation about studying geography at A-level at Sir Christopher Hatton Academy. My name is James Forster Ray and I'm the head of geography here at Sir Christopher Hatton. And if you're watching this, hopefully you're interested in studying geography in years 12 and 13 and potentially going on to study geography at university level. At Sir Christopher Hatton Academy, we have 3 teachers who currently teach the year 12 and 13 geography courses. There's myself, Mr. Forster Ray. I'm the head of geography and I teach human geography to year 12 and physical geography to year 13. We have Miss Boyce, who teaches physical geography to year 12, and we have Mr. Shackleton, who teaches human geography to year 13. All 3 of us are trained and specialist geography teachers, so you can remain confident in the fact that you are being taught by someone who knows the subject really well. Why should we study geography? I love this quotation from Barack Obama. The study of geography is about more than just memorizing places on a map. It's about understanding the complexity of our world, appreciating the diversity of cultures that exists across continents. And in the end, it's about using all that knowledge to help bridge divides and bring people together. He's right insofar that geography is not just about learning the capital cities and rivers of countries, but actually learning about how places and people interact and how the environment interacts. And that's a really important thing these days because we know that the world is a very evolving place, both physically in terms of climate change, for example, and on a human level in terms of things like migration. Which exam board do we cover at Sir Christopher Hatton Academy? We follow the Edexcel A-level geography course. Now this is broken down into 4 key component parts. Paper 1 is physical geography. So as you can see here on the screen, paper 1 is a written examination, 2 hours 15 minutes, and this is 30% of your total mark. We study different topics such as tectonics and coast, although I'll talk about those in a few moments. Paper 2 is human geography, and again that is 30% of the qualification. Paper 3 is the synoptic paper, that is 20% of the qualification. In the synoptic paper, this essentially is testing you on your ability to consume resources that you've been provided. So you'll be given a resource booklet with some key information and visual graphics, and you'll need to use both your knowledge of the course that you've studied, but also your ability to analyse those sources to be able to produce written answers. And finally, paper 4, which isn't really an exam paper because it's the non-examined assessment. So this is essentially the coursework project. And as you can see here, that is 20% of the qualification for the Geography A-level. This is a 3,000 to 4,000 word project where you're required to collect some primary data out in the field somewhere and put together a investigation where you will investigate a refined topic and try to work out whether your hypothesis before you actually did the investigation was correct or not. So what topics would you study if you chose to study geography here at Sir Christopher Hatton Academy? So on the physical side of the course, so that's paper 1, coasts. So you would start by doing this in year 12. You would start by looking at the physical nature of coasts and the theory behind coastal processes such as erosion, deposition, transportation. And then you would go on to look at more integrated themes like how do the humans use the coast, how can we protect against coastal erosion, and that kind of thing. And then tectonics. So you'll be looking at the physical geography of volcanoes, earthquakes, how do they occur, where do they occur? And again, with most of the physical geography topics, then looking at splicing that with human themes. So why do humans live near volcanoes and earthquakes? How do humans mitigate for these disasters? Why is it that poorer areas around the world suffer more than richer areas from these kind of hazards? In year 13, you'll look at the water cycle. You'll look at rivers essentially and how drainage basins work and how storms affect river basins. And then you'll go on to look at areas of the world that have water scarcity, water surplus, how we can manage our water resources to make sure that we have enough drinking water to go around. And then finally in year 13, you'll study the carbon cycle. So you'll be looking at how carbon moves around the world, where different carbon sinks are, such as the rainforest, And then we go on to look at carbon more specifically in the atmosphere, and particularly global warming and climate change. And that's where the topic really comes into its own, looking at how we can adapt to climate change, how we cause climate change, and what the future might hold for our planet if global warming continues. Paper 2 is the human paper. So in year 12, you'll start by studying globalization. You'll look at how the world feels like it's shrinking because we are able to communicate more freely and get to places more quickly. We'll look at how transnational companies locate around the world and the positives and negatives of this. And so generally, we'll just look at globalization as a concept and if it's been a good thing or a bad thing for our planet. Then we'll look at the topic of regenerating places. So we'll look at how old towns and cities, particularly in the north of England, that went through a process of deindustrialization, how they have tried to have a rejuvenation and bring more employment and affluence back to the area, because for many years these places have languished in poverty or deprivation at least. Then in year 13, you'll look at the concept of superpowers. Now, some people argue that these days there's only one proper superpower, and that's the USA. But in the past, we had the Soviet Union as well, the British Empire. And we'll look at how these superpowers work, what defines a superpower, and how they interact with other countries around the world and their impact on the world. And then finally, in year 13, the final human topic to study is migration, sovereignty and identity. And that's a really important topic these days. With things like climate change becoming more and more of a problem, there will be more migration and people moving from areas affected. And you'll be looking at why people move, different types of migrants, what are the effects of migration on both where they leave and also where they go to, and how might patterns and flows of migrants look in the future, and what are the reasons for these. Let's look at in a bit more detail at the NEA. So as I said earlier, this is 20% of your qualification. The NEA is a real opportunity for you to focus on a particular part of the geography that you are passionate about. You can choose to do a topic on any relevant theme that you find interesting, as long as you and I both can work out how it's going to work and if it will be doable. The project, like I say, should be between 3,000 and 4,000 words, and you're going to investigate a very specific issue here, and to do that you're going to collect both primary and secondary data. And the fieldwork data is really important, and we'll talk about the fieldwork trip in a moment. You will be expected to show evidence that you have used both quantitative and qualitative data to support your investigation, and you need to analyse your results and evaluate your results, and evaluate your project, and tell us that you have the self-awareness to know where your project had strengths and where your project had weaknesses. And hopefully by the end of the project, you'll be an expert on that particular topic, and you'll be able to even teach me about it. Okay, trips. So in order to help support you for your NEA, every year we go on a 4-day residential trip to Weymouth in Dorset. Now the purpose of this trip was threefold. First of all, to help you acquire skills in collecting geographical data. And that's really important because, especially if you went on to university level where there are multiple trips, it would give you a bit of a head start maybe against other students. Secondly, acquiring data to potentially be used towards your NEA project. So many students come back to Hatton and they use the data that we collected in Wellingborough to use that towards their NEA project. Although many students don't, and many students prefer to do an NEA project that is more local to the Wellingborough area. And then finally, building on knowledge learned in the classroom by experiencing it in the field. So for example, the coast topic that you study in year 12, the regenerating places topic that you study. These topics, whilst we cover them extensively in the classroom, it's really nice to go to somewhere like Weymouth and spend time on the beaches and look at how the coast is working there in more detail, and also spend time in the town centre learning about how the council in Weymouth has tried to regenerate the town. So these learning experiences will help you for the examinations for those topics. Many students actually say that this is the highlight of their entire A-level course whilst at Hatton, even not just within geography, but across their whole A-level experience at the school. The 4-day trip to Weymouth is certainly a highlight, and we've got some lovely pictures here that I took on the last trip, here down near Durdle Door. Here are the current year 13s next to Durdle Door, the famous archway. Here we are on a very expensive seawall that was built at Lyme Regis. And here we are in the centre of Weymouth, looking at how they have tried to regenerate the area. And this is the Weymouth Docks quay area, where they've tried to introduce more bars and restaurants and hotels to try and attract more people to come and visit. So yeah, very interesting trip, and certainly a highlight for many students. What can you expect in a typical geography lesson? Well, no lesson is exactly the same, and there are a range of activities that you could be expected to take part in. Don't expect them to be just lectures where you write down notes. We certainly want you to remain an active learner, just like you were at GCSE. So there will be independent tasks where you'll be given sources of information like news articles, data tables, etc., where you'll be tasked with investigating those. Group tasks where you'll be working with a team to try and come up with solutions perhaps to a problem. Research where you'll be asked to use your internet device or a book to find appropriate information. Presentations, you might be asked to research and then present information to the class and teach other students. Debates. Now, geography is often a very contentious subject with lots of interesting issues that can be debated. So often we will split into teams and debate those issues, and that's a good way of you thinking about the other side of the opinion in more detail. And finally, of course, examination questions. You'll be practicing exam questions using mark schemes. You'll be writing essays to be marked by your teacher as well. Entry requirements. So how can you be eligible for studying geography at A-level at Sir Christopher Hatton Academy? Well, in the very least, we want you to have 2 grade 6s in English and geography, or at least 1 grade 6 and 1 grade 5. Now, it doesn't matter whether the grade 5 was in English or geography, but certainly a 5 and a 6 in English and geography is the least that we're looking for. Now, this is to ensure that you can cope with the written requirements of the subject, because you do have to write essays. Now, whilst it's not as heavy as history or English, there are still essays to be written, and also to make sure that you have a firm foundation of geographical knowledge that you learn over GCSE. Some people do ask me, can you study A-level geography if you haven't done GCSE geography? Yes, although rarely. I think on a case-by-case basis, we will consider students who did not do GCSE geography. We would prefer you to have done it because most of the topics at A-level geography build on a foundation that was laid at GCSE geography. However, if a student is particularly academic and very able and shows a willing desire to try and catch up and do a lot of extra reading around, then we would consider students who have not studied GCSE geography. Where could geography take you? Certainly beyond a university course, many of these jobs that you can see here would be a potential route of employment for you. Meteorologists, so looking at becoming a weather person, so not necessarily on the TV, but going to work maybe at the Met Office in Exeter. Epidemiology, we're looking at the theory of disease, which of course is very relevant these days with the COVID-19 pandemic. Going to work for our national parks or in the energy sector. Travel sector, mapping, so cartography. There are many different types of jobs that are available that you can see here. And some further information here. So public sector, going into environmental health, for example, or becoming a civil servant. Going into consultancy like IT, career paths such as geology or statistics. Going into the energy sector like petroleum or renewable energy, or geochemistry, farming, for example, tree surgery, ecology, and of course being a geography teacher. You might want to go into the classroom and impart your geography knowledge on other students, whether that's at school, at university, or in a private setting. So I hope this presentation has been useful. Thank you for listening, and I hope that if you are interested in studying geography A-level, that this has helped galvanise your interest. If you have any questions, please send me an email and I'll be happy to help.